I'm going to read a second piece from the short story, It's Lonely Here in the Valley. Eva had gone to bed and she wakes up next morning. During the night, the rain gave way to flakes of snow which hung in the air before whirling about by a strengthening wind. The range had gone out during the night and the house was so cold when Eva woke that she decided to stay in bed all day. The dogs scampered up the stairs when she called them, jumped onto the bed, snuggled up against her back to keep her warm. Once or twice she looked up through bleary eyes to see the snow swirling past the window. From the direction of the wind, she knew the snow was drifting up against the kitchen door. She was reminded of the winter of 1947 when the snowfall had all but buried the house and had been cut off from Clonee for nearly a week. But people always laid a good store of fuel and food in those days and so survived until the weather improved. And of course, there had been more people living in the valley then too. Only she and Jim Byrne were left now. Suddenly she shut up in bed. The cows, they had no shelter, and some sheep were bound to be lost. Reluctantly, she sank back in the bed. There was nothing she could do except pray that they could weather out the storm. Jim Byrne got up late, for he wasn't one for lying in bed. He was too industrious for that. But the morning was dark and he kept dozing off. Snow can have that effect on you. He felt warm and snug until it danced at the bedside clock woke him up abruptly. It was 10:30. How could that be? It was still dark. He shook the clock. No, it hadn't stopped. Half the morning was wasted. Drawing the back to bed clothes, he strode towards the window. Pulling back the curtains, he stamped his foot at the raging blizzard. Blast the weathermen for always getting the forecast wrong. He had planned to check on the sheet, and today was his day for going to Clonee. It would be madness to attempt to venture out in a day like this. He drew a deep breath. The day wasn't going to be wasted, he decided. He would do the accounts and tidy the house. Jim took after his mother, whose boast was that you could eat off her kitchen table. Folks were full of admiration for his widowed mother and the way she ran the farm and reared 6 children, only to see them all emigrate to work on building sites in England, with the exception of Jim, who stayed to look after her when she was ill. His solitary figure was often seen standing, head bent in prayer, at her graveside. Life in the valley has always been hard, but his mother was resourceful, and as time went by, she bought the farms of those who had either died or emigrated. Jim Byrne grunted at the thought of old man Moran wanting to marry his mother. Who in their right mind would have anything to do with that skinflint? How did Eva manage to live in that godforsaken house, he mused as he sat down to a breakfast of bacon and eggs and frying bread. Her kitchen door was always open. The fertilizers stacked inside were clearly visible from the road. The place was no better than a pigsty, made worse by those 2 mangy, flea-infested dogs lying about the place. But she'd never leave it. Such a pity, Jim mused, getting up from the kitchen table, for she had been a pretty slip of a thing once upon a time. Shamed to see her now so slovenly and so stubborn, the spitting image of her father. Jim had told her time and time again that she wasn't up to running that farm on her own, but would she listen? Not her. How was she managing in the blizzard? He wondered, placing the accounts book on the kitchen table. It was a sure bet she was short of food, it being her day for going into Clonee. He'd given up offering a lift years ago. Why bother? She always refused, and none too politely at that. Should he battle his way over to see how she was? Was she all right? No, he decided to open the accounts book. She had only bashed his head off as usual. The following morning, Jim woke to an eerie silence. His nose was red from the cold. The glass in the inside of his bedroom window was frosted over. Outside, the countryside was snow quiet. He was worried about his sheep, but more worried now about Eva Moran. It took him over an hour by tractor to travel what would normally be a 10-minute walk. Fear gripped him. There was no smoke rising from her kitchen chimney. He shouted and got no answer. Snow had drifted up against the kitchen door, so he rushed to the other side of the house, but it was useless. The front door hadn't been opened in years. Again he shouted, Louder this time, but still no response. Finding a shovel, he frantically dug the snow from the kitchen door. An ominous silence met him when he pushed the door open. Instinct told him it would be useless to call out again. His heart was pounding as he clambered up the stairs. Jim stood at the side of the bed, gazing down at her. The room was colder than an icebox. The waxy sheen of her skin told him she was dead. He shook his head to disbelief. Why, in God's name, hadn't he come yesterday? What a way to die. She'd be alive now but for her stupid insistence in throwing the stupid cause. Eva, he whispered, his voice broken by remorse. But wait, did her eyelids flicker just then? Was that his imagination? Stop. The shield is shallying, he told himself sturdily, and BD swung into action. Knocking the dogs off the bed, he pulled back the curtains, grabbed her wrist. Her pulse was very weak, but at least it was beating. He spoke her name softly. Her lips flickered again, more strongly this time, then slowly opened. Here, drink this, he said, pouring hot whiskey from the flask he had brought with him. He lifted her head and forced the whiskey between her lips. Some of the liquid dribbled down her chin. I'm going to leave it at there, and I'm going to do some meditation, I think. Okay, take care, bye.